dynamically allocated waveguard. So firstly, let's just look at a high-level overview of the threat. So basically, if we have some sensitive information or some secret and some untrusted process, and so the main covert channel that we'll be focusing on is the shared LLC to which the information can be leaked. So just a quick overview of some of some of the attacks possible. So for example, this is a simple flush and reload attack is possible based on the cache state. And yeah, so another leakage, information leakage which can happen through the shared cache state is shown here, where say the receiver evicts the tag PA and displaces bit TX and TY. And then if the transmitter accesses PA, then if the receiver probes it again, then he can then based on the access delay, he can find out whether TA was accessed by the transmitter or no. So these are some of the basic attacks. And so for these kinds of attacks, along with the so for these kinds of attacks, there are many fronts of defense, such as maybe restricting such as restricting the data types by not allowing speculative execution without the permission checks, or maybe reducing the bandwidth of the attacks by reducing the how clearly you can see the timestamps. But these are like patches to particular attacks. So now the goal of this paper is to have a mechanism that can close the cache-based side channel altogether by creating isolation between various domains. And this they want to do this while maintaining communication between OS and users, two-way communication, and also making minimal modifications to hardware. So one of the earlier approaches which was given was to partition at page level, to set partition at page level. So basically, each thread would be given to a particular set, and so this is also called page coloring because these bits these bits on the page level correspond to a particular set, right? But now what this creates is a coupled relationship between the cache required and the DRAM memory. So like basically all of the bits which are associated with this on the physical pages can only go to this thread. So this has two issues. Firstly, that if say some process requires 1/4 of the cache, then it will also have to be allocated 1/4 of the DRAM memory, which is not ideal. And also there needs to be some memory movement in the main memory, such that all of the memory required for that process is present in that part of the DRAM itself. So this is not ideal. So a better way of doing this is wave partitioning, where in each set, say this is a 4-wave set associated with cache, then in each set we can give some number of ways to each thread. And so this is better because this decouples the relationship between the cache and the DRAM. So yeah, this is a better way to do it. And currently, what Intel has is a cache allocation technology, or CAT, which is which is optimized for performance. So it has insecure way. So it is insecure way partitioning because when it evicts from the cache, so when it does basically this orange, these two ways are given to one thread and these two are given to some other thread. So now when there is an eviction, the eviction happens in that thread's own base itself, so that it cannot crash the full LLC, right? But when this thread wants to access some address, then then it looks for hits in all of the ways. So if it is looking for hits in all of the ways, then it is still vulnerable to is still vulnerable to flush and flush and flush and reload type of attacks, right? So then what DAWG proposes is a secure way partitioning, where this part is the same, where it looks to evict victims from its own ways, but also when it is looking for address hits, then also it will only be looking in its own ways and not in other ways. So now both hits and writes can only happen in its own ways, and so this creates so now these two can be called as protection domains, right? So this is one protection domain, this is another protection domain. So now just to explain how this is implemented, so let us take the example of say a two-way set associative hash, right? And say there are two protection domains, domain 0, domain 1. Okay, now what they do is they associate each of these domains with two variables for each way. Okay, so for example, there is a policy fill map. So now this policy fill map gives the uh, so basically this policy fill map gives the uh, tells us whether or not we can evict from that way or not. So basically for domain 0, the policy fill map for way 0 is 1. So domain 0 can evict from way 1, but it cannot from way 0, but it cannot evict from way 1. And similarly, policy hit map indicates from where all this domain can get hits. So again, domain 0 can get a hit from way 0, but cannot get a hit from way 1. And similarly, domain 1 can evict from way 1 and can get hits in way 1, but cannot do that in way 0. So I hope that clears up how that creates the two protection domains, domain 0 and domain 1. And these policy fill map and policy hit map are stored in model specific in something called model specific registers. So now one more thing which we require is that if we are just partitioning the whole thing into static domains, then these might as well be private, right? But so now we also want some of the advantages of a shared LLC. So we do not want them to be statically partitioned, but we want them to be dynamically partitioned. So if one process requires more ways, then it can be given that. So now this requires both hardware and software changes. So first step, what we need to do is to say, so now the example that I'll be using to explain this to consider reallocating way 1 to domain 0, right? So here domain 1 was allocated to way 1, but now I'll be allocating it to domain 0. First thing we do is to update the policy fill map of way 1, because now that we are shrinking, so now that we are going to reallocate it to some other one, we don't want to write here, right? So we don't want to write here, so we update the policy fill map of way 1. So this goes from 1 to 0. Then what we do is that we want to flush way 1 from all sets, because now that this way 1 is being reallocated from domain 1 to domain 0, we don't want the information from domain 1 to go to domain 0, so we need to flush these. Okay, so now in this requires some new hardware mechanism which allows the flushing of waste. Then we need to so now that we have flushed the way 1, we cannot get any hits from there. So we need to update the policy hit map of way 1 also to so as shown here from 1 to 0. And now that we have cleansed, like basically we have sanitized these ways, right, from domain 1. So all of this, it has now it is sanitized from domain 1. So now it can be allotted to domain 0 as we want it. So now we show how it is allocated to domain 0. So this is basically the way that dynamic reallocation happens. And one more thing which is important to note is that when the these MSR writes are happening, they are fenced so that so that they cannot be called during some speculative execution, right? So now that we have this, so now we have a dynamic reallocation. We also want cache coherence.
Hey, Sasank.
So the basic,
Sasank?
so consider conventional set associative cache. So for conventional set associative cache, any given line can only be there in one way of a set, right? It cannot be in more than one ways. But now that is not true here for our dynamically allocated for our DAWG method, because we can have the same line in two different protection domains in the same set, right? So and this is only allowed as long as both of them are in the S mode or the shared state, because at that point they are only reading from that. And say now that if a line is present in one protection domain and another protection domain is calling for it, like it's asking for that, then in a conventional scenario, it would go from it would go from the cache itself to the other place. But now this won't happen because the request for the same line also respects isolation, and so this will all they will see it as non-matching, and the request will actually be fulfilled from the memory and not from the cache. And so the next is that so now the problem comes when there is a multiple so now that we can have state lines in more than one way in a set, we cannot but we cannot have multiple modified lines of modified lines, because then we will not have cache coherence, and so that responsibility is actually given up to the software to prevent this from happening. And so you from these things we can get a read only and copy on write sharing protection. So this is how we got the cache coherence. Now one more thing which this method tackles is that now till now what we are seeing was just the cache tag state based attacks, but there can also be a attack based on the metadata. So I will explain that using the NRU replacement policy, which is not recently used. So let's ignore these second and third lines for now. And so what basically the NRU replacement policy does is that whenever we get a hit in any way, they set it to 0, right? And whenever we get a miss, we start checking from the left hand side, right? And the first one that we get is the one which we victimize. Okay. So, for example, look at this, right? Only at the first line, and say that W1 and W0 belong to one thread, and the other one belong to another thread, and these guys, the W1 and W0, they try to access something, right? And and they get a miss. Now, if we did not have some extra mechanisms, then it was very much possible that once we started checking from here, we would get a one in any of the other ways, and some other domains way would have been evicted because of a miss in this domain, which is something which we outlined in the start that we don't want. So what we use is an NRU mask, which is same as the which is like when we have a 1-bit NRU, then that is same as the policy underscore fill mask, because policy fill mask was basically which all ways can be evicted by that. So now that is only one for W0 and W1, right? And it is 0 for all the rest. So when we AND these, this is the effective metadata now that we will be working on. So since the NRU mask is 0 for all of the ways of other protection domains, then they cannot be victimized due to a miss in our protection domain. So they will only be victimized when a protection, when they will only be evicted when, yeah, when a miss happens in our protection domain. So that is what happens here, as you can see. And again, if we see that if there is another miss here, consider the number, right? And if there is another miss here, but if there are all zeros, then what the NRU replacement policy does is that it evicts the leftmost way, and it sets all the other ways to 1. The metadata for all the other ways to 1. So that is what is happening, but we can see in this case also the other protection domain does not get affected because of this layer. So that is how using this DAWG mechanism we have removed both of our so we have removed both the cache state based side channel and our cache metadata based side channel. And so do we get a promise isolation? Yes, because now we have our non-interference of hits. Like we cannot evict. Okay, yeah, one point which I forgot to say is that even CS rush is not allowed across protection domains. It is restricted to that protection domain. So now we cannot evict from some other protection domains, and we cannot get hits from other protection domains. And even the metadata protection side channels are secure because of this. Because of this. And also there cannot be any leaks from system calls because as I mentioned that uh, MSR rights are fences, so they cannot be speculatively so like they cannot be called in some speculative execution. Yeah. Yeah. This is the isolation that we get from the cache base from this, but are still some limitations. So for example, if there is a receiver, then it can do a API call, a system call, which basically like so if an I is provided by receiver, so then the API call basically accesses a of b of I, right? And the b of I is so basically the b of I gets accessed in the cache state of the victim. Okay. So now after the receiver does this, he can start giving more API calls from A using A of J, right? Where we can just do like a trial and error where we can put J equal to 1, J equal to 2, J equal to 3. And whenever he gets a lower latency for the API call, then you can get some information that B of I is equal to J basically. So this is one of the limitations which this paper does not tackle. And so now moving on to so some of the evaluation setups. So basically, they've used CAT, which was the internet policy, as their baseline for measurement. Yeah. So one more thing that I think we should mention is that they have like this dynamic reallocation, like when to do it and how much to allocate is not has not been mentioned in this paper, and they have left it as future work. So here we can see that like all of the simulations are done for various ways allocated, and like it isn't dynamically allocated as is promised. But we can see that if it was dynamically allocated, and if we consider the best case, then all of the benchmarks have around 4 to 7% slowdown only in the simulation, and they have also done again using CAT as their benchmark. They have done some experiments with the hardware using a Haswell 20-way 30 MB L3 cache, right? And they have mentioned that as we can see as the graph size increases to 23, then the slowdown we get is very minimal. And they have also argued that in real life the graph sizes are either comparable or greater than this, so the slowdown is actually very less because of this DAWG implementation. So these are the results from the paper, and so I think the conclusion is that even though the CAT mechanism might slightly be faster than the DAWG mechanism for protection against any kinds of attacks, the DAWG mechanism is obviously is clearly better protection against others. So yeah, that's it. Thank you. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Can you go back to 2 slides back? Saksam,
Hello.
can you hear me?
Oh.
Can you hear me now?
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. I think it was still connected to the.
Okay.
Were there any questions in between which I missed? I'm sorry. Yeah, it was a demo.
That's okay. So maybe next time others can actually do a mock with their setup, right? Especially with this online avatar. Can you go to slide number 20 and 21?
Yeah, sure.
So what exactly is the title of this slide? Evaluation setup hyphen simulation. What does it mean?
Like, okay. So
So,
basically, like,
can you tell me what's the takeaway from slide number 20 and 21? First you said 4 to 7% slowdown. Go to slide number 21.
yeah.
Here you said evaluation setup hardware. So previously it was on software. It is this is on hardware.
Yeah. So this they had simulated on ZSIM. So they had on ZSIM they had like simulated both the cat and the dog mechanisms.
No, but that I got it. But then why all this time pass text evaluation setup simulation, evaluation setup hardware? Does this mean anything technically? These are, non-technical junk words, right? Evaluation setup hardware, some 20 MB. Then
Yeah.
there's no takeaway.
Yeah. I mean, like the takeaways, I think, like it is just that the slowdown is not like there's very little slowdown even
Yeah,
in.
then the title of the slide should be performance slowdown, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, like okay, I initially had
Forget
in,
about that. So that's okay.
yeah,
Initially, partially, that is okay.
yeah,
Second
okay.
thing is what happens if there are, you know, let's say you are running on a 16 core machine and the number of processes are more than 16.
Yeah, so in that case, they have mentioned that they will be virtualizing these domain IDs, and what they had said is that so they will be time multiplexing. So yeah, so there will be time multiplexing. Uh, 1 second, let me just name it properly. Yeah, so basically they will be time multiplexing these process IDs, and in between of every switch, they will be flushing the ways.
Okay. Yeah, overall it was not a good presentation. I was expecting a bit more professional presentation because we have already finished first round of presentation, right? Anyway, others, any questions? Otherwise, we will jump into the next part.
So hi, so my question is, this domain ID is some sort of translation of process ID, and how, like, it is generated, like.
I'm not really sure how it is generated. Like I think like okay, I'm not really sure actually.
Yeah, this is generated by the system software, either OS or security monitor, whichever is trustworthy.
So it is per process basis, right, sir?
Yeah, it's per process. At a high level, you can say this is like a one process is one domain ID, but it may happen that you have cooperating processes. So let's say process 1, 2, 3, 4, they want to cooperate, they want to work together. Then all 4 can be allocated to one domain.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no more questions, we can go for the next presentation.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, but
Yeah.
I can't see you. Who is
Yes,
this?
this is Arnav, sir. Just a
Okay.
minute.
Yeah, I think you can start sharing your screen and present. Yeah.
So, yeah, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Arnav. I will be presenting hyperthreads today. And we are here presenting the paper on randomized last level caches are still vulnerable to sidechain attacks, but we can fix it. So,
Hey, Arnav, I
yes, sir.
can't see your screen. Is this only me or others are also facing the same?
His screen got stuck on screen sharing.
Yeah. Arnav, could you fix it before you
Yeah,
present?
sure.
Yeah, maybe reshare and that will fix it.
Is not visible?
Not yet.
What now?
Nope.
Just let me rejoin. Give me a minute. I will rejoin.
Okay. Maybe one thing that you can do from next week is whoever is presenting, they can join at 3:25 and check their setup. That will help everyone.
We actually had a mock presentation in our group. This is unfortunate.
Oh. So then mocks are also not helpful.
Yeah, is my screen visible to anybody?
No.
No, not yet.
What to do?
Maybe someone else in your group can share this.
Yeah.
Rajiv, someone, anybody? You can share the screen, the slides. Yeah.
Okay. Someone is sharing. Yeah. Now I can see it.
Yeah, just a moment. I'll share it.
I have it open, I'll share it.
Okay, fine.
Yes, thanks. Okay, go on.
Yeah. So, hi everybody, I'm Arnav Mishra and I will be presenting the paper Randomized Last Level Cache are Still Vulnerable through the site random, but there are some fixes we can do on it. Rajiv, next slide, please. Yeah. So this is the overview of today's. We'll go through a little background. Certain the concepts we'll just go over through so that we can understand the problem solutions better, and then we'll do certain performance analysis what the solutions will provide on your system and the conclusion. So next slide, please. Yeah. So this is the traditional caches which we presently have in our systems. We have this address which get divided into whose binary get divided into tags, set, and offset, and based on the set, it gets placed into our caches. It's a simple addressing scheme, and to be frank, it's a static one. Next slide, please. So yeah, so being static, it gets with the vulnerability that eviction sets can be pre-computed and can be kept beforehand before any attack, before commencing any attack. Next slide, yeah. So this is the basic side channel attack of prime and probe, where we have the eviction set primed before, and then we wait for the victim to access a particular cache block, and then we probe it to see whether the victim has accessed or not the cache block, and based on this result, we can based on these timings and other things, we can infer certain results. So to remove this particular dependency of the static assigning, a randomized cache has been introduced. So here, as you can see here, instead of directly mapping the set number to the caches, we have a basic randomized function based on a key maps your address to a specific cache block. And the key is also changing on a particular duration to keep the randomization dynamic. Next slide, please. Yeah. So the randomized caches previous week we studied was one of them was a Caesar, in which what there is an LBC, basically a low latency block cipher, which based on a key encrypts your addresses to a particular cache. It had its one can say a bigger brother Caesar S, which was like a skewed version of it. In this, along with in randomization, what we did, we splitted the particular cache set into two partitions, and we used separate encryption scheme, encryption functions as well as keys, so that it can much harder for the attacker to analyze which of this particular set a block can go to. Next slide, please. Yeah, as you can see here, the basic eviction set, which was earlier pre-computed and easily possible, because of this randomized skewed caching, it gets particular non-trivial for a particular attacker to guess the eviction set. First of all, it has to be done on runtime, because the particular mappings get changed periodically based on the keys, and secondly, and thus it's quite difficult for the attacker to guess an eviction set in a particular remap period. Next slide, please. Yeah, there are certain fast algorithms which were entered for the search of the eviction set. First one was the group algorithm, which used to do like a very large set of random arrays. It used to take. It used to group them. It used to divide them into W1 groups, then search for sequentially search for the group which is not responsible for the eviction set and remove it and repeat the cycle till the gets the minimal group size W. Second was the conflict testing algorithm, which used to have a random set of addresses, and individually used to check the congruence. It used to match the congruency of the particular random address with the eviction target address, so that whenever it is a match, we can put that address into the conflict address set, and gradually we used to have a conflict address set, potential conflict address set, which we will use for say commencing the attack. And third is the prime prune test, in which we
Arnav, you can
Yes, sir.
move on. There's no
Okay,
need to
sure, sir.
explain this. Yeah,
Sure,
yeah.
sir.
Yeah.
Just yeah, back yeah. So here I'm just displaying the time complexity of the three algorithms. So by experimentation, we have found that group evasion doesn't work on the skewed caches. The reason behind it, because we can say because the number of false negatives are very much high when we are group eliminating because of the randomization happening on the cache side. Conflict test still works, but requires a large amount of accesses to the cache. Prime testing is specifically what we can say it. Connect to LRUs, and especially was very good for LRUs. But when you move on to the other replacement policies, its time complexity increases to SW squares. So next slide, please. Yeah. So the first problem is with the problem is with the Caesar hypothesis. It claims that a complete eviction set is always required to purge a victim data from an LLC. Though it is true multiple scenarios, but may not be always. Next slide. Yeah. Here we can see that if I have an eviction set, it might happen that okay, we may not have a complete eviction, the partial eviction set even, but it may just be correct enough to remove the victim data from its position. But yeah, reusing it might not give us the same exact results because the randomization happens, and there's almost a 50% chance that this might work in case of a two-way skewed caches. So what we need to do, we need to have a repeated algorithm, repeated method, so that we can achieve more better results. Next slide, please. So what currently happens is the attackers, when they are using this eviction set technique, they prime the LLC, and then they again probe it to see which are the cache having access or not accessed. So what the paper proposes is before reusing the particular eviction set, we can flush the LLC so that first of all, flushing the LLC, it is a faster and cleaner method, and on an experimentally it has been shown that repeated use of flush, then reuse of the eviction set, then again flush, then reuse of eviction set might give us the better results, as you can see in the graph here. Next slide, please.
Hey, Abhiraj, go back to previous slide.
Yes, sir.
I think we should spend more time explaining this plot. If you have put this plot in your slide instead of
sure,
yeah. So what exactly is the takeaway from this plot?
So the exact takeaway is like for a particular size of eviction set, when you are repeatedly using the repeatedly using it, using CL flush in between, what happens is the eviction rate, which is actually the probability of kicking out the victim cache block, increases. So and here is the 5 different ways. You have the Caesar method, Skew2, Skew4, and
that you are explaining, but what's the takeaway? Finally, what's the takeaway message from this plot?
Final takeaway, is that like even we don't have a particular completely full eviction set. A partial eviction set can also work if on a repeated basis, and we can achieve a good eviction rate.
So if I understand correctly, you are saying that even if a eviction set is of size 64,
yeah,
I can get 100% eviction rate with seizure, right?
Yeah.
That's the takeaway, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, move on.
Yeah. Next slide, please. So second is we till now we are saying that okay, we have to have a complete eviction set. That is the whatever the particular cache set is there. Well, let's say we have a 4 blocks in the particular cache set. Then we should have a 4 block eviction set so that we can perform. But that may not be entirely true. Here, what we are, let's say for example, we have a smaller eviction set. Let's say of size 2 for this particular example. We still can kick out the victim from its cache block, and here is basically some result with the sets on a test set of 1024 set with 16 way and two partition or the setup with a set size of 60. We the paper apparently achieved the 30% eviction rate with 30 at 50, and see there is a linear growth in that. So we can assume that with a particular set size, we can achieve a higher eviction rate. And they also did an experiment in which what would they took a 30% eviction rate set, which was a set size 25. That means a 25 size of 25 eviction set, which had an eviction rate of 30%, and they repeatedly used it for 20 times. The result which came out was more or less matching to a result which would have come up when would have taken a set which had 90% eviction rate. So this suggests that yeah, with a smaller eviction sets also, it is possible to perform an attack. Next slide, please. Yeah. So the third problem which we are going to discuss is the flawed inner remap interval. Traditionally, whatever the Caesar and the randomized skewed system Caesar has suggested, the remap interval should be related to the LLC access count. To be precise, it should be 100 LLC count. But here in the graph, you can see that when we performed a CT, that it is a CT algorithm on a particular system, we found out that, and here you can see the accesses are marked with a square and the evictions are marked with a triangle. The count of the accesses as well as the evictions was nearly similar. So this is to question whether actually the number of LLC access count is a good measure. So it turns out to be that sometimes the LLC access count might be overlaid by the L1 and 2 cache filtration, which reduces the actual LLC count for remapping. So we have yeah, that's for the most of the victim accesses gets filtered at the L1 and L2 caches. So this suggests that the remap interval which we are considering based on the LLC access count might not be right enough. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, here we did an experiment when in which we took a CT algorithm, and since CT gives less evictions as per the PPT, we thought of that. Okay, let's take the CT algorithm to find out that 25 set cache, which gave a 30% eviction rate on various cache design scenarios like Caesar, Q2, and Q4. The the table gives you the results for various scenarios, and if we assume that the security level we want has to be more than a year, then the chosen periods for each of them is on the rightmost side of your column, which shows that a 10 access count might be a good for Caesar, similarly 14 for Q2, 25 for Q4. So all of them are basically less than 50 LLC counts, which is half of the remap period as per proposed by Caesar S, which was 100 LLC counts. So is this a problem for us? Next slide, please. Yes.
Hello, I have a doubt.
Yeah, sure. Go on.
So what exactly is this year thing? Can you brief about it?
Yeah, basically, it's basically you can say it is basically the time which you might require to get that particular eviction set with a particular eviction rate. Sorry, a remap rate. Let's say your remap rate is 10 LLC per 10 LLC count. That means after every 10 LLC count there is a remap. Then for getting a CT with a 30% eviction rate, that is 25 eviction set, you might take a year. Similarly for Q2 and Q3, and each of the column described how much amount of LLC count or remap interval you are taking. First column is for 100, then is for 50, then for 20, then for 10. So we are considering roughly if it takes an year for you to find an eviction set, then you are secure enough.
Okay, so have they mentioned that how are they getting these numbers?
I mean, for the initials, it's milliseconds. They might be just simulating it. But for the IR, I think they might be estimating. I'm not sure about that.
Okay.
Okay. Moving on, the problem is like every sorry, good one. Yeah, problem. The problem is at every remap there is a roughly 40-50% cache block eviction which causes a reduction in the system performance. So next slide, please. Yeah, our solution is, instead of using LLC count, LLC access count, we use the LLC eviction as a counter for the interval. And as you can see this particular graph, when you are using the remap out of every 10 LLC accesses and remap at every 10 LLC evictions give a much better result in terms of LLC misses compared to a non-remap period. You can see the LLC accesses is going up, the normalized MPK is going above 1, but LLC eviction 10 is still at par, at most 1 in all the various programs we had, the system ran. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is another can say our result, which proves out that LLC eviction is a better result for us. Here, what we have planned is the black lines which you're seeing are the miss rates plotted along the time axis, and the red lines are the access LLC accesses, sorry, the remap points which we have plotted. As you can just go to the first circle, which is between the 11 and 13 timing points. You can see that the remap, there is no miss in the system, but still the LLC ACC 100, which is the LLC accesses remap function, is quite heavily accessing the system, which causes an extra misses in that particular duration. Whereas on the eviction 10, the miss rate is still low, and the number of, or say, remaps is also low. So the performance is, is maintained. Second, if you go to the final set, the 26 to 30 version, there also you can see the miss rate is low, but still ACC 100 is performing remaps which are unnecessary. In the blue circle, which is around 21 to 23.
I think Arnav.
Yes, sir.
I think you should explain precisely. You are actually teaching with dense slides and all. That's not needed.
So
you should put one sentence. No, that's okay, but you should put a takeaway, right? If you explain each plot for 2 minutes, then it will be 20 minutes for the entire plots only. Right?
Okay, so
that's not the goal.
Sure, sir. I will just give a takeaway then for the slides.
Yeah.
Okay. So
it's not a paper, right? You have just copy pasted plots from papers and you are
yes,
explaining it. That's
yes,
not the goal actually.
But I thought that, okay, explaining the result might be much, I mean, okay.
Yeah, move on.
Yeah.
Rajiv.
So the second solution which you proposed was the multi-step relocation. Normally what a Caesar is, what we'll do it when we are having a remap. Let's say we have here you can see, let's say we have the pointer P which depicts the point till which remap has happened, and now we have to remap point E. So in Caesar's case, what will happen is, let's say the encryption function points E's new location to the access point G. So it will simply evict G and put E on its behalf. This will cause an what's the LLC miss afterwards if someone tries to access G, which were earlier in the system. So the system, the paper proposes another method, which is a multi-step relocation.
See, Arnav, I will tell you the problem with this presentation. You are not telling what exactly is the problem. Why you need multi-step relocation?
So multi-step relocation actually helps in reducing the LLC misses.
That's what that's the first step that you should say, right? You should say that when you are relocating from block A to block B and block B is getting evicted, this increases the LLC miscount, let's say by XYZ%, right?
Yes,
to reduce that, this paper proposes multi-step relocation. For example, here when E remaps to G, then G also get remaps to M, and finally it tries to find out an invalid block. So eventually reduce the LLC miscount. That's all.
Yes.
Why roaming around? Bhai, yeah, ho raha hai, wo ho raha hai. Finally, nothing is clear. Chalo, move on.
Okay. The paper also advocates for non-skewed set associative over the set associative over the skewed set associative systems, pointing out its hypothesis. It might increase the hardware complexity and also provide a long-term LLC latencies. So in that case, it might happen. We need to strengthen the non-skewed randomization also. So next slide, please. So for that, we present a solution of remap when attacked. So along with remapping at every particular interval, we can also have a remap whenever we detect an attack in the system. But it might be based on the number of LLC counts. So as you can see here, the recorded rate of LLC evictions, when it is standardized to Z score, we can see certain two peaks here. These are the data which we obtained while running the PPT algorithm. This points the high points you see on the right hand side show you that there are very high LLC evictions when the PPT algorithm was actually running. So and it's quite high compared to the normal what to say
benign application.
Yeah, normal applications. Yeah. So similarly, next slide, please. GE detection, GE algorithm running also shows similar kind of peaks when run on a similar system. So what we propose is a hardware solution which could detect the LLC counts, and whenever there is a par threshold, the threshold is passed for an LLC count, perform a remap for the system. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this is basically the performance override of remap when the attack detection, which we discussed in the last slide. So as you can see, the red markers show you the eviction with whenever the attack extra was detected. So here
what is RPGI or remap? Okay, yeah, go on.
Yeah, remember G instructions, sir, as mentioned here. So basically here we can see that compared to eviction 10, eviction with detection also proves very less overhead on your system while running all these applications. Next slide, please. This is the performance overhead or the multi-step relocation we discussed. When implanted with eviction system and eviction and detection also. So as we can see that the overhead is not very much in the normal standards, but although in the SKU16, the
just say that it introduced negligible performance overhead. That's all.
Yes, sir. Introduced negligible performance overhead in the systems, except in the SKU16 scenario. Yeah. So here's the conclusion. We saw that the remap by counting LLC eviction is much better compared to the remap by accesses. Multi-step remap, which we used, reduces the remap cost for the system. Triggering a remap when attack created might be helpful in case of the non-skewed scenarios, and thus we promote compared to the because the scenario becomes a non-skewed scenario are also somewhat much more secure than before. So we promote the use of non-skewed scenarios, non-skewed set associative caches in compared to the set associative caches. Thank you. Next slide. And any questions?
Yeah, so my point is, why are you guys preparing so much, dense slide as if like you are teaching someone with paragraphs after paragraphs? We had a mock session, right, where I discussed how to present. This entire presentation could have been done in 10-15 minutes saying, okay, these are the 4 problems with existing randomized cache. Problem 1. Then you could have talked about solution 1. Then problem 2, solution 2. Like that. So 4 problems, 4 solution, maybe some results. You guys are actually roaming around explaining each and everything as if like, you have 3 hours to explain. And then it should be crisp and clear, which is not happening. Can you go to first slide? Sure. Very first slide. I think Rajiv has to do it. Go, yeah, second slide. That's the title. Second slide. Yeah. So what exactly this reference mean? Go to slide number 2, Rajiv.
So, this actually I forgot to remove it.
Okay. Go next. There are so many spelling mistakes also throughout the presentations. I think somewhere the seizure spelling is wrong. And these figures you have created, is it?
Yes, sir.
Maybe for the basics, you can just take the slides that I have used. You can put a reference because there is no need to prepare slides for a traditional CAS, associative CAS, and blah blah blah.
Sure, sir.
By the way, again, this paper has nothing to do, right? The citation that you have put here.
No, this basically the image we are took from there only, so I cited it.
Why from this paper?
No, I mean, I thought it was much more intuitive to show. That's why I simply told
No,
you.
as far as I know, this paper has appeared in a low quality conference or journal. So don't do that blindly.
Okay, sir.
If you have to take it from a good conference or a good forum.
Sure.
Because yeah, and then again, this one means nothing here, right? Anyway, so I have similar comments that I had, compared to last presentation that your group had. It is better, but still it's not crisp. You guys are putting so much information and then finally, trying to explain each and everything. That's not the goal. That paper is there. Anyone is interested, he or she can go and read the paper. Here it's a trailer for the paper. I am telling you again and again. And then if you guys don't listen to it, then I will grade accordingly. Maybe that will make sure that you improve.
Actually, last time we were only the application. So this time we thought we will put the application as well as the result. It might be got.
No, results are fine. No, I appreciate that. I'm not saying it's wrong, but if you go to some of the result slides that you have. I think Rajiv stopped sharing. Yeah, go to the end. No. Rajiv, why are you opening this paper? Go to the slides. Go to the end of the presentation.
Well, something happened.
Your machine is under attack. Okay, if it doesn't work, then it's okay. But all these slides are like too heavy. You are writing 3 sentences, 4 sentences, explaining each and every term, which is actually not necessary. Go to end. Go to the end slide. Yeah, final. Yeah, now go back. Go back. Yeah, see what is this A here? You have copy pasted this figure. That's okay, but you can copy paste it properly, right?
Sure.
You are taking screenshot from here and there. Go back. Go back. Yeah, this slide. Yeah, slide number 23.
Yes.
23.
20. Yeah, that's not madam actually required, right? We're gonna simply
See what exactly this is. The paper proposes use of non-skewed set associative CAS over skewed, although later brings some performance benefit. Then there is some big but. It will increase hardware complexity, can have long-term LLC latency. Full stop. क्या है ये? In that case, we might need to strengthen the non-skewed randomization such as seizure. This just waste of time, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So I don't know. So how shall I prepare slides and send it to
No,
everyone?
sir.
Maybe that will help. I can do that. It will take
No,
10
sir, we will
minutes.
do it then. And we'll try.
ठीक है. Is there any other questions from anyone? Because you guys are putting hard work, but finally, if you don't communicate properly, the hard work will become, useless. People will say, okay, it's not clearly communicated. Okay. Devasius, you can stop the recording.